which I've had some trouble with in the past. And we'll do our final Zoom session here. I had a couple of things to share with you, and then some questions for you going forward as we finish up here. Two different topics that I wanted to share for starters, and then I'll hit the questions and let you talk for a while. One of the topics is administrative careers, a topic that sometimes comes up at about this point about, what if I might like to be in some sort of administrative role in a higher education context? Um, it's not, while many people do end up seeking administrative careers, it's not normal to do that early on. Typically, you at the very least get tenure first before you think about an administrative career, and possibly promotion to full before doing this. And the rationale there is administrative duties, if you're in a 50 to 100% administrative role, typically use up so much of your time that you don't have time to do things like research and publication that would lead to further promotion. So a lot of people wait until they've maxed out their promotion possibilities before they seek an administrative role. It becomes initially, it's rare to see somebody starting as an assistant professor who says, "Ooh, I would like to be a higher education administrator." Typically, most folks who start off as faculty think, "Well, I want to be a faculty member. I enjoy the duties of a faculty member. That's the role I would like." One of the things that sometimes happens, um, inevitably, if you're a faculty member, you have occasional clashes with administrators at various levels. And sometimes you come to realize that the bozos higher up are no smarter than you are. And you start to get the feeling that you couldn't possibly do this any worse. Maybe you could even do it a little better than some of them are doing. And that particular train of thought leads a fair number of faculty to think about being administrators. Department chair is kind of a special case. They're sort of half administrator, half faculty. Sometimes you take the role to avoid having it taken by somebody who's known to be a disaster, even if you don't want to be an administrator. Some departments rotate the role so that everybody gets stuck with it periodically. It's not unusual to see people in the department chair role who don't want to be department chair and have no higher education aspirations. If you do aspire to an administrative career, movement to advance a career in those directions usually comes above the department chair level. So if you do end up thinking about something like higher ed administration, think associate dean, dean, associate provost, things like that to set your sights on if that's what you're really going for. Department chair is good preparation for those, but a lot of people who are department chairs never go or want to go above the level of department chair, and they're not using it as a stepping stone. So that's one paragraph for you, administrative careers. Other paragraph, new for 2024, generative artificial intelligence. Coming on very, very fast, is going to be a defining force for your career and pretty much everything else. It has emerged as a major force within the last 18 months. Um, get to know it well, figure out how to use it to your benefit sooner rather than later. I'm going to stick in the chat here a new book that was just published earlier this month. I just finished it about a week ago. Strongly recommend taking a peek at this when you have a little bit of time. It's called Co-Intelligence. Ethan Mollick is an academic who's also a researcher. He's a business professor and does research into the area of artificial intelligence. Strongly recommend taking a look at his thoughts on the most productive ways to use artificial intelligence, because whether you like it or not, it's going to be huge, and it's going to be huge fast. So you either get steamrolled by it or you figure out some way to integrate it into your activities in one positive way or another. So I strongly recommend that to you as an action to put on your professional agenda. So questions I have for you. Actually, I have several questions for you going forward. Um, we had you talk about diversity statements, and we talked about teaching. So one of the questions I have for you today is, how are you going to adapt your teaching style to diverse populations? What are you going to do differently?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't catch the end of it. How do I
Sure.
adapt teaching styles to what?
Diverse populations. Defined however you would like to define diverse populations. These are the
Something
kind of questions that you might get in an interview. Go ahead, Jared.
something that comes to mind that was kind of touched on in the article that we read of expanding my view of what diversity is, not just the typical like race, gender, ethnicity, but also like socioeconomic status and stuff. Of
Mhm.
as far as I know some courses have moved to like what's it called? Open resource. Uh
OERs, open educational resources.
yeah, so maybe restructuring like the class in such a way that like it's not as much like read at home as much as it is like covering the content in class so that we can make sure everyone's on like an even level as far as the access to the content that they have.
Okay, that's a potentially productive way to go. How about some other ideas? Amber, Kim?
I'll be honest, I think I'm struggling with the question because um with my limited teaching experience, I haven't necessarily had a large enough population to necessarily change the way that I would teach based off of that.
Mhm,
Most of the classes I have are like 5 to 10 people.
mhm.
So I know that you can change how you would structure a class based off of the size of the class itself. There are
Okay,
certain things that you can't do in a larger classroom that you can in a smaller, but
true.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, hypothetically speaking, is one of the things that you're saying, besides the fact that your classes have tended to be small, have they tended to be fairly homogeneous? I mean, the people in them are pretty much all alike in a lot of respects, or has there been a wide variety of different attributes in those small groups?
I guess it depends on your definition. Alike as far as where they are in their education, yes.
Oh, I'm
Um,
thinking about things like, is English the first language for all of them? Do they all have excellent mathematics backgrounds? Do they all come from the same culture and have the same traditions as far as, things like holidays and celebrations and values? Could go on past that.
um, no, so there would be a whole host of, guess, religious differences between um, and therefore cultural differences. But
Mhm,
I always seem to struggle with how that would impact my lectures or how I would interact with a student. So
mhm.
that, like I said, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a tough one for me too, just because I don't see myself teaching in the foreseeable future. But I
Mhm,
do think uh if looking back on the classes that I did teach, like considering especially so teaching like a large lecture class with students of different majors and considering kind of that
mhm.
background and how it can
Okay.
tie into the class and the content that I'm teaching.
Mhm,
And then along with like what Jared said, just accessibility, I thought that article was really good about kind of opening my mind as to what DEI could actually be and what wouldn't it would entail. So
Okay. So you guys are thinking mostly in terms of class size, I guess. At this point. Okay, fair enough. Do be aware that if you end up seeking a position with significant teaching, that might be the kind of question that you would get asked. And the diversity in that particular case might be strongly tied to the institution that you were applying at. For example, a lot of institutions on the West Coast have a high proportion of Hispanic students. Um, are there things one might do to diversify teaching style, given that that would be your audience would be one kind of example? Let's go in a different direction. Whether you're going to be teaching or doing research as your primary duties, or maybe something else in academia, Kim. I know you're in a slightly different role there. One of the things that's true about any academic role is that you periodically encounter rejection of one kind or another. You write a paper and it gets rejected. You write a grant proposal, it gets rejected. You apply for a different job, it gets rejected. How will you handle rejection in your professional academic career? What strategies do you have for doing that?
I just kind of take it as a learning opportunity, especially in research. If you took rejection pretty hardly, you won't last, because you tend to get rejected a lot, and the
It's
feedback
true.
is pretty harsh, or it can be pretty
Yes.
harsh, especially if you take it personally. So it's more of just a learning opportunity.
Direct feedback tends to be very direct.
Sure.
That's what the people providing feedback would prefer that people say about it rather than harsh. No, go ahead.
But yeah, so all of it should just be viewed as a learning opportunity of how to better your applications or your papers, and also look at it as a gauge of what the field is looking for at that point in time. So like if a paper
point.
comes back and the reviewers all of a sudden want a stronger emphasis on, in the historical perspective, sex is a biological variable. Well, now all of our data has to include male and female. So things like that, kind of gauging what people are looking for, can help your research be better as well. Same can be applied to grants.
Good strategy. Jared, Kim, there's going to be rejection. I hate to say it, but
Yeah, I think for me it's just like a mentality as far as like if that door is not open for you, there's another one that's a better fit, or another one that's sort of meant to be. And so taking it like as a learning opportunity to uh improve your application or whatever it is, and then just seek opportunity elsewhere because it's likely that there's a better fit for it somewhere else.
Jared?
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of along both of those lines, just having sort of the growth mindset about it and the all feedback is good feedback kind of idea. And I like what Kim said as far as there might be a better fit. It might not be because what you're doing is bad or that you're bad. It just maybe it's a a better journal that's a better fit for your manuscript, or maybe it's a better position that you're a better fit for. So just kind of taking it in stride.
One of the things that almost everybody experiences at some point in academia, probably in most other fields as well, is feelings of imposter syndrome or feelings of inadequacy. What kind of strategies do you have on tap for dealing with that if you encounter it?
I tend to reach out to my mentors and people who know me well and who've kind of gone through this process, for reassurances and things like that. But yeah, talking to people who go through it as well.
So seeking some external validation from some knowledgeable sources. That's a good strategy. What else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say support system. And oftentimes, at least where we are in our careers, like I'm not sure about you, Amber, but like Kim and I, like we have the cohort model like in our program. So like leaning on the people that are also going through it to understand that like, you have some commonalities between other people who might be experiencing the same thing.
Amber, do you have any good strategies for that?
So I first try and acknowledge that I'm feeling like what's causing that feeling. Because typically it's related to something acute that's happened, like an experiment didn't go well, or I wasn't able to answer a question the way that I thought I should have. So understanding where it comes from or stems from can help. But then I go back and look at my CV, like when I started out versus now, and like some of those like accomplishments or publications or things like that, more tangible milestones, I think have helped me kind of overcome those feelings. We also have a cohort, but I never really got to interact with people that were in my year just due to the way that the world was working at the time, but that's helped. And then, yeah, of course, talking to my mentor for sure.
Okay. So I like the suggestion of sort of reaching out to touch various accomplishments that are actually part of your experience at this point to say, yeah, I really did do that. I accomplished that, and reaffirm I have made progress steadily, and perhaps I'm better qualified than I'm thinking just this moment in a down period of time. How are current events and trends affecting your career aspirations at this point? As we sit here in spring 2024, the things that you're seeing out there in the world and in academia. Are they affecting your plans?
I guess I'm not super up with the times, like, I guess with current trends. I think I'd mentioned before, I'm not too much into social media in general. So
Well, are you
I know
seeing
like
anything
NIH
happening?
trend.
Okay, NIH trends might be one good example. If you're current on NIH trends, how are those affecting your particular career plans and ambitions?
I guess maybe not necessarily career, but how research will work in the future is they're trying to eliminate USBs or any type of data collection on anything other than an NIH database.
Wow.
So that's going to affect a lot of people who are doing, for my case, my mentor has a computer that's still Windows 97.
Wow.
So like that can all those computers would have to be on an NIH database where you immediately update your data. And they're trying to do this to avoid fraud.
Well,
Or
that's a good goal.
yeah. But it requires more hoops, especially initially. But that's something that they're recently trying to unveil in the next, and they said they're going to try and do it in 4 years. So
are you taking steps in some way to acknowledge that and be prepared to address that? Maybe be an early adopter, maybe be a mentor for other researchers who are having to make that transition?
Yeah, so what that means for me is that any grants going forward will have to have some type of statement similar to how, as I mentioned before, sex is a biological variable has to be included
Right.
now in all grants unless there's an explicit reason not to have it. There'll be an additional statement that is related to data accessibility at NIH. So if you're ahead of the curve of that, that might give your grant a leg up for funding.
Do you already have the skills that would be necessary to make sure your computer was all hooked up to the NIH database and reporting directly to them, the technical skills?
Yeah, so the database, to my understanding, hasn't even been created yet. This is something, like I said, they're implementing in the next 4 years. But if I assume it would be as easy as if you could upload it to like your OneDrive or to Google Drive, it would be a similar process. So in that case, then I would hopefully have the skills to be able to do that.
It would be a good idea just to make sure that you're one of the early people who confirms that you can do that. So when your colleagues struggle with it, you can say, "Oh, you need a little help with that? Here, let me show you how that works." That could be a very positive reputation among your colleagues to do that.
Agreed.
How about other trends? Are there any trends folks are seeing in higher education at this particular point out there, just higher education writ large? Academic transformation. No.
I guess similar to Amber, I guess I'm not very as plugged in as I should be.
I would go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like I guess I need to be more plugged in, but I think of things like what's going on at WVU, and I would take that into consideration if I was searching for a job and look up the financial state of any institution that I'd be applying for, down to the college and the school that I'd be applying to. So I guess I'm not familiar with like the trends per se, but it's something that I, based off of our current experience, would be, aware of going into applications.
That one's written very large, and it's not just WVU. It's there. President Gee has predicted that something like a quarter of all the small private colleges in the country are likely to close down within the next 5 years. So depending on the size of the institution you're considering as an employer, there's an enhanced risk factor there, and you'd be wise to look up financial components there. And GRAD is one of the components. Another related issue that's actually playing into that. Have you heard the term demographic cliff? Anybody? No. Part of higher education trends. If you look at the distribution of the population, how many folks there are out there at a given age, the number of students graduating from U.S. high schools plummets in the immediate future. That means the number of students eligible to be college freshmen plummets in the immediate future. The pie is getting smaller for which colleges and universities are competing for undergraduates. And that also has major implications for how many faculty members they employ and for their economic status. I would one of the things I would recommend as a general practice, if you're on the job market or anticipate being on the job market, is pretty regularly try to read at least the front page for the Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Education, the place where most of our weekly articles have been coming from. But they'll, even if all you do is read the headlines in the first paragraphs, on the front page, you can get a pretty good idea of major trends, and you can extrapolate from that particular point. So I won't burden you with a large number of questions here, but I wanted to toss those out there as sort of forward-looking, career-focused questions. You have a couple of things to check on to make sure that you've finished before you sign off for the semester. You've noticed this is a short week, right? Friday is the last day of classes, and that's when things are due. You still have an elevator pitch due on VoiceThread. Nobody had pointed it out to me, but I noticed the due date was wrong on there this afternoon and fixed it. So the due date should be correct now for this coming Friday. You need to get your elevator pitch up there. You also have our week 15 article discussion, which is up there. But that's pretty much it as far as what you have left to do for this particular class. Going forward, some general pieces of advice that I would recommend for you, whatever your field is, keep your finger on the pulse of your field. What's important right now? And Amber, your NIH example is a really good one. You're paying attention to soon upcoming changes in their grant requirements. All of you keep your documentation up to date. Keep your CV up to date. If you're going to be using a resume, keep your resume up to date. Whatever is available in your field, pursue continuing professional development. What's available for new skills in your field? Try to stay abreast of that. Participate actively in as many different roles in your field as possible so that if you're thinking teaching, research, and service, you can actually point to something in all three of those categories. Take another look at that 5-year plan, revise it, extend it. If you get a position, go ahead and extend your plan out to the point of earning tenure and use your 5-year plan as a roadmap to getting what you need to do done in order to earn tenure, because that 6-year period can escape before you know it. And suddenly it's too late to get that committee service in, too late to do that research, too late to publish those things. And it's rare to get a second shot at it. So if you can be proactive about it and use the 5-year plan as a cattle prod to keep you on track, it can be really, really useful for that thing. I don't really have any other new content for you, and I know you're busy, so I'm not just going to keep you around for the sake of keeping you around. I'd like to wish you the best of luck in your academic pursuits and achieving your career goals, whatever they are in your particular case, and wish you an excellent summer. I've enjoyed the class. I always enjoy this class, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to invest in it. I hope it's provided some things that may help you get where you want to go. I don't really have anything else for you. The floor is open for any questions or issues that you want to hit before we finish up. Not a lot, huh? Well, have a terrific end of the semester, and a very successful career. If there's anything I can do for you, I know I'm not directly in your field, but if you need a reference of one kind or another that I might be able to provide, please let me know and I'll do what I can for you. I'd like to see all of you get where you're hoping to go at this particular point. Bye for now.
Thanks, Dr.
Thanks so
Beasley. Good
much.
summer.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great summer.
You too. Bye.
Bye for now.